Hello chess fans and welcome to Chess5, and today I'm going to show you the game between Wesley versus Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and this game was played recently a couple of minutes before, and this game is from the Grand Chess 2 Paris Rapid 2021, and this is the round number 8 which I'm going to show you the game. Guys, I've recently changed my display. If you have watched my previous video, you can see that I've changed my display settings. Please tell me in the comment box that is this display much better than the previous one, or the previous one display was much better than this. So without any further ado, let's start the game. But before starting the game, I must tell them that Maxime just in round number 6 beaten Ian Nepomniachtchi, which has been qualified for the World Chess Championship title to fight against Magnus Carlsen. So obviously we can see that this is going to be a very interesting fight between Wesley versus Maxime. So without any further ado, let's dive into this game. So Wesley with the white pieces started with 1d4, and Maxime replied with knight to f6. Here we have c4 and we have g6. Here knight to c3, and here black is having option whether he can go for d5 or even bishop to g7. If you go for bishop g7, then we can say that the game is going to be in the king's Indian defense, and if he plays a d5, then we can say the game will go in the Grünfeld defense. So after knight to c3, Maxime played d5, so means we are in the Grünfeld variation. So here comes c into d5, knight into d5, and we have e4. So after e4, white is having a pretty nice center. So black captures the knight on c3, b into c3, bishop to g7, knight to f3. And all those who don't know about this position, I must tell them that in Grünfeld defense, white usually have a very nice center. But the problem of white having a nice center is now black is having options to create weaknesses on the center pawns of d4 as well as on e4. So black usually tries to break the center and create weaknesses on the board. So if white does not know how to play Grünfeld defense very nicely, then I think white will simply get crushed. So after knight to f3, black played c5, attacking the center pawn on d4. So white plays h3, stopping this bishop g4 ideas to pin up the knight on f3. So black castle. Here we have bishop to e2, planning to castle and also developing a piece. So you can knight to c6, creating more pressure on the d4 pawn. So white plays bishop to e3, giving some support on the d4 pawn, with the bishop, with the knight, as well as with the queen. So after bishop to e3, black played c into d4. We have c into d4, and black plays f5, now creating some weaknesses on the e4 square. So here white plays bishop to c4 check, and black played king to h8. Here white castled, and here black pushes the pawn to f4. Here capturing up the e4 pawn was also fine move, but after knight to g5, bishop f5, protecting the e4 pawn, white plays knight to f7. Now the queen is also hanging and the king is also attacked, and the knight is protected by the bishop. So here rook into f7 is forced. Here comes bishop into f7, and here comes knight into d4. And after rook to b1, we can say that this position is an equal position, because although white is an exchange plus, but black is having 2 pawn extra. So we can say this is an equal material and it's an equal position. So that's why after castle, Maxime decided to push the pawn to f4 at the place of capturing of the e4 pawn. So after f4, white played bishop to d2, and here black simply captured the d4 pawn with the knight. So here comes bishop to c3, pinning up the knight, and knight is having a triple attack, and black is having 2 defenders. So obviously black have to move the knight. So here comes knight into f3 check, queen into f3, and although in this position black is a pawn up, if you can count the pawn, black is a pawn up, but although this position is slightly better for white because white has a large amount of development. His all pieces have been activated. Both the bishop has been nicely activated. His queen is nicely placed on f3. Perhaps the rook can come to d1. Perhaps the rook can come to b1, and white is having a perfect position. So after queen to f3, black played bishop to d7. The plan of bishop to d7 is black wants to put the bishop on c6 and create pressure on the e4 pawn. So after bishop to d7, Wesley played rook fd1, pinning up the bishop on d7. So black played queen to c7, removing the queen from the rook file. So now bishop is no longer pinned, and also queen is attacking the bishop on c4 as well as the bishop on c3. So after queen to c7, white played rook to c1. A very calm move and very excellent move, because after rook to c1 you cannot capture the bishop on c4, because now comes bishop into g7 check, and after king into g7, white will simply capture the queen and is going to win the game. That's why after rook ac1, Maxime decided to play rook ad8, getting this open file. So after rook ad8, white played bishop to b4, planning to capture the e7 pawn, and there could be some discovered ideas of removing the bishop from the c4 square, as the rook will attack the queen. So black played here bishop to c6, dual function. First, now there could be no discovered attacks, and second, the queen is also protecting the e7 pawn. So after bishop to c6, here white played bishop to d5. Here bishop cannot capture the bishop because the bishop is pinned. So Maxime played queen to e5. Now there is no pin, and perhaps black is planning to capture the bishop on d5. So here Wesley played rook to c5. A very excellent move by Wesley. So the idea of playing rook to c5 is, now white is threatening to capture the bishop on c6, and as the rook is protected by the bishop on b4, then the rook will also attack the queen on e5. So that's why after rook to c5, Maxime played bishop into d5. Here we have e into d5, and Maxime played rook to d7. The idea of playing rook to d7 is, now Maxime wants to put his f rook to d8 and create pressure on the d5 pawn. So after rook to d7, here Wesley played pawn to d6. A very nice move by Wesley. So the idea of playing d6 is, now the rook is attacking the queen on e5. The pawn on d6 is protected by the rook on d1, and the rook on c5 is protected by the bishop on b4. So everything is actually protected of white, and white is having a very nice position. And also the queen cannot capture the d6 pawn because the rook is protecting the d6 pawn. So in this position, obviously it's if the computer says it's an equal position or slightly better position for white, but practically speaking, I think it's trouble time for black. So after d6, black played queen to e6. Here we have d into e7. Here we have rook into d1 check, queen into d1, and here we have queen into e7. And here white simply played rook to c4, and the bishop is attacking the queen as well as the rook on f8, and the bishop is protected by the rook on c4. So it looks like black is going to be an exchange down, but it's an equal position, because here black will simply play queen to f7. And the idea of playing queen to f7 is, now the black is also attacking the rook on c4. So white actually cannot take the rook on f8. So if the game continues in from this position, then this would be after bishop into f8, queen into c4, bishop into g7 check, king into g7, queen to d7 check, king to h6. Here we have queen into b7, queen into a2, and in this position, although black is the pawn up, but he can't make any progress. White will able to repeat the positions by giving checks, and this is going to be a draw. So after rook to c4, there black could have simply played queen to f7, and it's an equal position. But at the place of playing queen to f7, here Maxime played rook to d8, and the idea of playing rook to d8 is, now if Wesley so will capture the queen on e7, then Maxime will also capture the queen on d1, and this is a simple logic. But here's your chance, guys. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the only winning move for white in this position. Okay, so to those who have found the right move, congratulations on finding the only single move which wins for white in this position. And if you found this move, you are a genius. I think your level is around perhaps 2000 rated plus, or even 2500 plus, as I think this move was missed by even a top grandmaster like Maxime. So obviously here white played rook to c8, a two fantastic move by Maxime, a clear shot. The idea of playing rook to c8 is, here the rook cannot capture the queen on d1 because the rook is pinned. Second, here the queen and the rook is both white pieces are attacking the rook on d8. And third, the most important part, here the bishop on b4 is attacking the queen on e7. So you can say there is a double attack, and it's an impossible to defend. So somewhat like you cannot play anything if you try to capture the rook on c8, which looks the natural move. So white will simply capture the queen on e7, and here white is just like queen versus rook, and white is simply going to win the game. So that's why when Wesley so played rook to c8 in this position after move number 27, Maxime with the black pieces resigned the game, and Wesley so with the white pieces won the game. It was a very short game of 27 moves, but the move which Wesley so came up with, like rook c8, was an epic shot by Wesley so, and from the start you can see white is having no trouble in playing the game. White is simply playing smoothly game, and this is what the level of Wesley so is. So obviously both the players are very strong, but this time Wesley so took the game by playing a nice game. So guys, if you like this game, then please like to my video. If you are new to my channel, then please subscribe to my channel. I will come up with these new videos for you guys, so please stay tuned. So thank you for watching, and bye bye.